All right, hello, my friends. So this is a little Q&A, and you only get to ask questions if you are part of my. It's called it's called a channel on Instagram. So Instagram has this cool feature that I can connect with you guys. It's kind of like a Discord platform, where if you want more details about me, and information about me, and questions I can answer, interact with me. Well, the algorithm on Instagram only allows you to post so much, but this little channel, which is free by the way, allows me to connect to people who want to hear about more from me. And so I posed, ask whatever you want. We got questions, and we now have questions, so I have answers for you. So you can check it out. If I remember and I'm smart enough, I'll put it down in the link below. Well, just go to my Instagram page, Strong by Science, and you'll see a channel you can there add yourself to. It's like if you go to the bio, it's in there. It's called The Place Where I Share Cool Things. All right, I got my questions here. Let's go to the first one. Quick story of how you met your wife. I saw this come through and I was like, wow, that's a different one. It was in college, sophomore year. I thought she was just the cutest thing. But me being kind of a shy, despite having a social media presence, I'm pretty shy and I keep to myself. And especially at that time, not horrendously self-confident in just general social interactions, let alone having to go talk to someone who I think is the cutest thing possible. So ended up meeting her. I went to a small Division III school. With that, I mean, you have like 1,400 people and all, so you're going to interact with basically every single person in your class at some point in time. Ended up sharing a class with her, and that's basically how it started. What's the homework assignment, or did you finish that project? Something pretty lame. And again, not very self-assured of myself. And lo and behold, one thing led to the next, and we've been together ever since. And it's been awesome. But I guess looking back on it, it's kind of funny just because of how nervous I was. Like if I had to talk to my younger self now, like, hey dude, look, like she likes you, it'd be kind of funny. But I was never like horrendously self-confident, especially in those kind of social interactions. And it was something that, gosh, I can remember going back into like even middle school feeling that type of way. Like, oh my gosh, for some reason there's such a chasm to cross in those. And then once you kind of break the ice, things are much easier. Now, this is a time before social media, really. So this wasn't a time where you could like a bunch of photos or whatever kids do now. Message people or have some, I guess we had Facebook Messenger and Facebook stuff like that. So there was some social media, but it was far, far, far more like intimate in that setting. Like social media back in the day wasn't so much for you to post and interact with the world. It was just like for you to interact with it, like a college or a school or like not even the whole college. Like, I mean, you basically would interact with this 55 different people. And nowadays social media is like for everybody. So like if you followed someone, you would notice. Or if you didn't follow someone, you would notice. So very different time. And I don't know if I even answered the question of how I met my wife, but I met her in school. I played basketball, and lo and behold, she'd seen me play before, and we'd talked, and we hit it off, and things went from there. And now we're married with a little one. So, cool question. I wish I had a better answer, but still a cool question nonetheless. About my recovery and cool down. So just asking about recovery, cool down, specifically for, recovery and cool down is a really interesting topic. So depending on the exercise modality that you're doing, and depending on the intensity of that modality, recovery and cool down can be very different. Because like, if I'm thinking about recovery from playing pickup basketball, hydration becomes a very large factor. If I'm thinking about recovery from a 20-minute lifting workout, you're not going to have as much sweat as you did playing pickup. Different type of recovery. If I'm thinking about recovery from an extremely anaerobic, oh man, I feel the burn kind of workout, versus something light and aerobic, well, maybe in the anaerobic one, carbohydrates become super important because you're just absolutely cooking all your glycogen stores. So you got to think about what you're doing, what you have done in the past, because your recovery today might be influenced by what you did the last 2 days. I might not need much recovery if I'm coming off of 2 days of rest. I might need a lot of recovery if I'm coming off of 2 days of work. So it really depends what you've done, what you're doing, and what you plan on doing, because what people make the big mistake is that they don't think about the meal they eat isn't necessarily a post-workout meal, but there's a post-workout meal, there's a regular meal, and there's a meal for like the next workout. And so for me, I went to the weight room today, I went to the court today and worked out, and I did not have much juice. I wasn't really ready to go at all. It's been a long week of work and training. But the big issue was I didn't eat enough dinner. And if I only have breakfast in the morning, and that's the only meal separating me and the workout, well, if I don't have a big dinner and a big breakfast, then my workout in the morning is not going to be very good. So I didn't eat appropriately, and my lack of eating hurt my recovery. Obviously, things like sleep, waiving the intensity of the workouts are really important. Undulating, so if you have one really, really hard day, well, the next day, don't crush yourself. I like to think about, for me personally, like a 7.5 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 intensity scale is something I can easily recover from. So if one day's a 9, maybe the next day I need to be like a 5 so I can even it out. It's kind of going back and forth between high and low if I am doing something really intense. But eventually you can build a capacity, so like intensity is relative. So it's not just total volume or distance or tonnage that you've done. It's total volume, distance, and tonnage being the amount of weight you've total lifted in a workout, relative to what you have been doing. What do I think, CLA, okay, so what do I think of CLA approach when it comes to skills training? So CLA stands for, well, I can't remember this. Constraints-led approach, thank you. I always was like call to action. Constraints-led approach simply means that you have a constraint, an obstacle that forces a specific outcome instead of teaching the person the skill. So an example would be, if you're trying to teach someone to hit a ball really far, like a baseball, you would measure swing velocity instead of teaching them how to swing a bat. The constraint is the velocity of the swing. By default, they're going to have to swing really hard, and in turn, they're going to hit the ball far. Versus you're teaching technique and form, that's extremely internalized. Both are useful in my opinion. I think at times there's an obsession with, ooh, the constraints-led approach must be the way. But, you still have to learn how to write the alphabet, know the alphabet before you can write an essay. So if someone's holding their hands wrong on a bat and you just tell them to swing as hard as you can, well, right, they're not going to get it. But if you switch their hands one time and just tell them to switch it, they're going to have it switched, golly, forever. So you didn't need a constraints-led approach. I find constraints-led approach typically more for people who didn't maybe successfully do it in a traditional way. Because if someone can do it traditionally, you just tell them, hey, go between your legs behind the back and shoot a pull-up jump shot when the defense does X, Y, and Z. And they can do that, well, perfect. Job well done. I made a whole video on this, so you guys can check it out. That's a skills training progression video for the constraints-led approach stuff. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I know people have asked that question already, and it's pretty been thoroughly answered based on how I feel comfortable giving you guys a detailed response. I'll spend 20 minutes on it. Have I experienced anything dealing with rhabdomyolysis, that's muscle breakdown, wear and tear? That's actually an extremely severe situation. Or central nervous system issues, and do you see a correlation? Well, I've not dealt with rhabdo, thankfully. That's really good to hear from my standpoint. It's a very severe situation. It typically happens with some form of extreme version of training. From my understanding, maybe some hydration stuff goes into it and some nutritional aspects. I'm not fully read upon it, like the exact specific recipe, but it's typically from a severe form of overtraining. Now, I can speak about central nervous system stuff, because central nervous system stuff is really interesting, because central nervous system is just an extremely general term used to describe something that's not muscular. So when you work out, you get tired, you can be like, oh man, I'm tired because the muscles are broken down. And then you can think about central nervous system as like volitional effort. I don't have much juice today, like I did this morning, to work out. My central nervous system is struggling. Now, there's a couple areas and umbrellas that comes from. One, Are you underfed? So just not eating enough food, not being hydrated, not having enough glycogen can make you feel lethargic, sluggish, and like you have some level of central nervous system fatigue. Another one is you've been excessively excited over and over and over again, and you have that grogginess and drowsiness that you get from excessive exposure to competition. The easiest example is if you think about you doing finals during a school week and you have all those tests and exams. By the end of it, you're exhausted because you've been focusing so hard. So you've been spending so much volitional effort focusing on a task that fatigues whatever pathways are involved. There's other ones that involve sleep and biorhythms, like when it's rainy out and it's like, oh man, it's gray out, you don't have much energy. That's like a biorhythm thing, or circadian rhythm thing is involving sleep. When you get out of whack and you wake up at a weird time and go to bed at a weird time, you're just not feeling like your normal self. All those are quote unquote central nervous fatigue stuff. The real question comes down to on like weird biorhythm stuff, like non-nutritional related things, does training through that central nervous fatigue really cause an issue? For example, I might not want to jump today. I might be kind of tired and not motivated today. If I still jump and try really hard, even though I'm not excited to do it, am I still getting a potent stimulus to create adaptation? And that's a really good question. I would have to guess you still get something. Like, I can't imagine jumping making you not jump high, if that makes sense. The other question is, by doing that, does it hold you back from other days? So like if I train through the fatigue today, does that cause more fatigue tomorrow? Is the fatigue due to monotony? Like if it's just because I'm bored of the stupid workout I've been doing, is that why you're fatigued? And is that the same as if you were excited because of a different workout, you would have a better outcome? Because that's like a I'm tired because I don't want to versus I'm tired because I'm tired situation, if that makes sense. If you get excited because someone else walks into the gym and it's your friend and you're like, yeah, let's get a good workout in, and you're now ready to go, but you weren't 10 minutes ago, is that really fatigue, or is it just a fatigue in the sense that you're just like fatigued from the exposure of that workout? Not like the actual physiological exposure and the loading, but just the general seeing the same thing over and over again, the monotony, the mundane of it. That's a good question too. I don't know. Like I go back and forth, like is music a good thing or a bad thing to use in my training? I don't use any music in my skills training. I find that to get in the way of a lot of stuff. Mainly, I don't like having some other external cadence or tempo driving the process. Instead, I'd rather have me driving that process visually and a lot of focus. But then again, if I'm lifting, I don't have that cadence and tempo issue in terms of skill development. So maybe the music is fine in lifting as long as it's not overstimulating you. I'm sure music is probably less artificially taxing on the body or artificially stimulating on the body than caffeine might be. That's a good question, though. I don't really know the answer as I think through this, just because the idea of central nervous fatigue is so confusing. It's so difficult to really grasp. You can recognize it, but it's hard to describe it. If you're an athlete, you can feel it. The most common things I've associated with it is grogginess, trouble focusing visually on things, trouble getting your heart rate up. What normally excites you doesn't excite you. Trouble sleeping, emotions are a big one, like easily agitated, aggravated, and irritated. You're agitated, aggravated, irritated, all three different things are kind of big ones. Mood swings, anxiety is a big one for me. When I get fatigued, I get really anxious about stuff, which is not a good thing. Those are kind of the big ones for me. I don't really have any hunger cravings. Some people get like, oh, I'm just so hungry for carbs or something like that. I don't get that too much. Actually, for me, sometimes I lose my appetite, which is a weird concept. Like when I get burnt out, I'm like, oh, I don't want to eat anything. I have to force myself to eat some food. So all in all, interesting discussion on the central nervous system. So if you guys have questions in the future, I'll keep it there for today. Go check out my What's it? I keep forgetting it. My channel. You can tell I'm kind of zonked today.
My channel, where I share
Cool things on Instagram. Check it out. I also try to upload these to Spotify to my podcast too, so you guys can listen to them without having to be on the YouTubes. So I appreciate y'all. Enjoy, and see, you can check out the weight room in the background for those of you watching the video. See, that's the weight room. Very cool. All right, thanks y'all.